Alright, this is an interesting article that I found. I wanted to share the article, and I'll try to put the link to the description section of this video. You can read the article for yourself, but I'm going to read the article, then quickly comment on it. I think it's just a good article about figuring out what a narcissist is, whether or not those are some traits that you have yourself, and just working on some self-reflection to make sure that you don't become an extreme when it comes to narcissism. I think a lot of people that practice martial arts tend to become narcissistic, and it's something that we all need to work on as we train in the martial arts, work on bettering ourselves. Alright, so here's the article. Do you have a narcissist in your life? These traits can be telltale signs. It feels like narcissists are popping up everywhere lately. They're the best, know all the awesome people, and attend the coolest parties. People who are narcissistic, they have a pretty big footprint. They have a lot of friends, they tend to date more. It's not that there are more out there, but people who are narcissistic are extroverted and have big social networks. You just run into them a lot. But not every narcissist displays the bombastic extroverted traits, and certainly some extroverts could look a bit like a narcissist. Most of us have some narcissistic qualities. Most are not full-blown narcissists, but if you have a lot of certain qualities, you might be. While only about 2% of the population struggles with pathological narcissism, there are people with loads of narcissistic traits driving us bananas at work, on dates, or in friendships. But how can you tell? Experts share some lesser-known behaviors that might indicate whether that super fun, self-involved friend, loved one, or coworker is really narcissistic. Number 1. Oh yeah, I totally know this. At a party, someone brings up the Battle of the Shivering Sea. That sea exists in Westeros, and that battle never happened, even fictionally. While most people would ask what the heck the person is talking about, a narcissist would know all about it. One of the most interesting findings you see is something called the overclaiming effect. You give them things that aren't real and they will claim to know what they are. Narcissists think that knowing an obscure reference makes them look good, causing the overclaim. And they certainly wouldn't want to admit to not knowing something. Number 2. Making mountains out of molehills. Let's say a boss offers up constructive criticism to her employees. That narcissist employee hears that feedback and blows up. Someone with narcissism gets enraged. They're very sensitive to anybody in any way in dissing them or putting them down. The problem with this anger, narcissists act on it. They can't let it go. Number 3, emotional hot potato. When narcissists feel vulnerable, they don't want to process those feelings. Instead, they put others down to bolster their self-esteem. They find ways to avoid being vulnerable. I don't want to feel small, so here you take these feelings. Number 4, having a string of broken hearts. Narcissists value fame, beauty, and success more than relationships. Sure, they date and have friends, and often these relationships start out exciting, but fizzle quickly. People who are narcissistic should have a trail of bad relationships behind them. It's not easy to see a history of terrible relationships, but a little digging can uncover a pattern. He also advises people to watch how others treat waitstaff, taxi drivers, or cleaning people. Anyone that narcissists might think are below them. If people act haughty with service people, it could be a sign of narcissism. Number 5, changing plans at the last minute. At the last minute, your friend skipped happy hour, leaving you alone at the bar. The week before, he weaseled out of movie plans. It seems like he wants to hang out, but he always cancels immediately before plans. They feel at the mercy of your schedule if they have to keep an appointment with you, and it makes them feel very uncomfortable. So they cancel. It's another way of avoiding feeling vulnerable. Number 6, throwing someone under the bus. Missed deadline, someone else is to blame. Husband shows up for a date night, but wife is missing. His texts are incomprehensible. People who are narcissistic are more likely to blame their colleagues, blame their friends. If you blame other people, you can still feel good about yourself. Number 7, surprise. At the last minute, your boyfriend shows up with a surprise date night tickets to a concert. It seems so romantic. But now that you think about it, every date is a last-minute surprise. Or he always picks the restaurant, movie, or a concert. When you suggested trying the new Ethiopian place, he couldn't go because he doesn't like Ethiopian food. He also said that about the new Italian place. They're exerting stealth control. They don't trust people to meet their needs. Coping with the narcissist. If you have a narcissistic coworker, friend, or family member, there are a few ways to keep the relationship fun and on an equal footing. Keep records. When it comes to work, keeping emails remains important. It's hard to blame others if lengthy paper trails exist. Catch good. The more somebody feels rewarded, the more frequently they engage in the behavior. Catch someone who is narcissistic in a moment. Show them they can be caring and understanding. Make a connection contract. Spell out what behaviors you will tolerate, saying something like, when you bring up my weight, I'll need to leave. Or if you start blaming others, we will have to stop working. Can keep narcissists in line. Gather a group. You need support. You need someone to see that and collaborate your story. Confronting narcissistic people is only going to make it worse. Keep your distance. You can have friends who are narcissistic. I wouldn't place a lot of trust or emotional energy in them, and I would focus more on the entertainment value. Alright, so that's the end of the article. I think that was a good article because I think a lot of us have some of those traits within us, and people that are narcissistic are not going to take criticism from others too well. So what ends up happening is that if you are narcissistic yourself, you need to self-identify these issues that you have that are causing disruptions within the relationships around you, and you need to fix it yourself. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of people that are narcissistic tend to gravitate towards fields of power, such as martial arts, such as law enforcement, such as the military, such as any type of leadership position. Like, people that just love to be leaders are probably going to be narcissistic, and they're going to have a lot of these traits. And people that love power, people that love fame, pretty much all the successful people out there that we know of are probably narcissistic. There's psychologists that would accuse Osho of being narcissistic. There's people that would say that Bruce Lee was narcissistic. There's a lot of people that say Floyd Mayweather Jr. is narcissistic. Everybody's saying Donald Trump is narcissistic. So you see, Donald Trump is like one of the richest billionaires out there, and he's considered narcissistic by a lot of psychologists. And they even said Bill Gates is considered a narcissist, and he's the richest person out there. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the best boxer out there, and he's considered narcissistic. Bruce Lee was considered one of the best martial artists, and they were saying he's narcissistic. So it's almost like most of the people that we view to be successful in this world are probably going to be narcissistic. Now, these traits are not necessarily things that we should be proud about. So when you notice these things within yourself, you got to learn to fix it. If you feel that you're a know-it-all, that you know everything all the time, clearly there's something that needs to be worked on. Within the martial arts, you need to work on that spiritual development to learn to be more open and learn to not be a know-it-all, to learn to shut your mouth sometimes. If you're the type of person who doesn't take criticism well, then that's something that you might have to learn to work on as well, because it might be a friend, it might be a teacher, or a coworker or a boss that's trying to help you become a better person. But if you're not accepting criticism from anybody, then you just never improve. Then that's a problem. Emotional hot potato. These are the type of people that always put other people down just to make themselves feel good. And that there's a lot of people out there like that. And you got to notice that within yourself to try to refrain from doing that. To try to refrain from putting other people down. But maybe just work on celebrating the successes of others rather than enjoying, you know, seeing misery. I mean, I think there's a problem right there, Having a string of broken hearts, you don't want to go around breaking people's hearts and making people feel sad and depressed. And if you have a history of doing that, I think there's something that needs to be fixed within yourself. Changing plans at the last minute, simple things like that. If you know that that's how you are, notice that that's not appreciated. If you're going to say something, then you just stick to it. Otherwise just don't say it. Throwing somebody under the bus, blaming your friends or your coworkers for mistakes that you've done. Not owning up to your own mistakes, and that's a huge problem right there. And that needs to be fixed if you notice that within yourself. So, I just think it's a great article to get people to reflect. Stuff like this is not something that people want to talk about. It's not something that they want to ever get counseling for. But I think a lot of us will have these types of traits that we need to self-reflect on and work on within ourselves to become better people. And to train in the martial arts is all about bettering yourself. And I feel that as a martial artist, the great martial artists out there are not narcissistic. They're balanced individuals. They're not people that only think about themselves and don't care about other people. It's a balance, So I think hopefully this article will be very helpful for some people out there.